Talk about the economy overall. We've had an unprecedented series of events. First, shutting the economy down, and then bringing it back, and with unprecedented monetary and fiscal support. At this point, the models that we've used sort of are out of kilter. We can't predict what's going on. Where do you think we are right now? Because there's a lot of concern that with pumping all that money in, we may have inflation.
Yeah, I'm very worried about that. The monetary policy is completely unprecedented. I mean, we had as you point out, right, the government shut down the economy to a very significant degree. The economy collapsed in the second quarter of last year. But in the third quarter, it came roaring back. And we are well on our way to a tremendous recovery, right? The economic growth is very strong. The argument for this calendar year is it 6, 7, 8%? You know, really numbers that we're not used to thinking about. And despite that, we have a Fed pursuing zero interest rate policy and buying $1.4 trillion worth of securities on an annualized basis, a combination of treasuries and agencies. I think it's long past time for the Fed to begin thinking about how and when they're going to, I guess, first taper the bond buying and then eventually normalize interest rates. And I'm worried that the paradigm they've set up almost guarantees that they're going to be behind the curve if inflation actually becomes problematic and persistent. So this is a big concern of mine.
There's the problem of what the Fed's policies might do to the economy. There's also the problem of what perceptions it's creating, perceptions in the marketplace.
Right.
How do you make sure we don't have a so-called taper tantrum, but also inflation expectations in the population overall? As you know well, if you could let the inflation expectations get out of control, you may have a big problem.
Yeah, and you know, one of the ongoing discussions I've had with the chairman is the difference between the actual monetary phenomenon. So I've always been sympathetic to Friedman's argument that inflation is a monetary phenomenon, where others, including I think a lot of folks at the Fed, tend to think it's more a psychological phenomenon. In other words, it's about expectations. Well, I think it's more the former, but we're losing ground on the latter. Recent surveys are showing that the consumers and businesses are increasingly expecting higher rates of inflation and for them to persist. The Fed has assured us that the current spike is going to be transitory. But one question that comes to mind is, you can only know something is transitory after some period of time has elapsed and it hasn't ended, right? At which point you're behind the curve. And as you point out, expectations may well have become really entrenched that we're in for higher inflation. So that's what I mean when I say I'm concerned that the Fed is going to be behind the curve here.